Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and folks who do not identify with the gender binary. My name is Jen. I am the coordinator of dating violence prevention at Partnership Against Domestic Violence. And I have the honor to every single day come into work at home because we're in a pandemic and work with young folks on ending dating violence within, especially teen dating violence within our Atlanta neighborhoods. We have a really amazing panel lined up for y'all who are attending today entitled Believe in Digital Advocacy to End Digital Abuse. So a lot of the times when we talk about digital abuse, people hear things about like cyber stalking and hacking passwords and things like that. But cybercrime is so much more, and it really, a lot of the time, similar to physical and sexual abuse, starts off as a series of smaller behaviors that then escalate into something that it should not be. Also, though, technology can be used to empower survivors and to empower us and to use digital tools within our advocacy. So I am super proud and excited to announce our two panelists on this panel today. I am very lucky to have with us Colette Coleman and also Dante Jackson to kind of walk you guys through who they are. Dante Jackson is a special agent with the Department of Justice and serves as a board member for the Partnership Against Domestic Violence. Prior to being named as a board member in January 2019, Jackson served as a volunteer at the PADV Gwinnett County Shelter. Agent Jackson has worked at the Department of Justice for approximately 19 years. During his career, Agent Jackson has worked a variety of investigations targeting members of Colombian organized crime, narco trafficking, violent street gangs, Eastern European organized crime, and cybersecurity. Agent Jackson earned a MS in Criminal Justice Management from Sam Houston State University and holds several cybersecurity certifications. We also have here Colette Coleman. Colette Coleman is a community development specialist, engagement and training lead for Microsoft in Metro Atlanta. Thanks for joining us, Dante.
Hey, you're welcome. Sorry about that.
No, you're so good. To continue with Colette, she represents Microsoft locally. She and her team are dedicated to supporting educators, young minds, and educational institutions that develop the ingenuity, innovation, and intellectual curiosity of our youth. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Information Systems and Management, a Bachelor of Arts degree with concentrations in Social Psychology and Business Administration, and a Master of Arts degree in Human Resources Management. Colette is a decorated veteran with a long career who served in the U.S. Army from 2001 to 2015, holding 6 ranks in her tenure and quite an impressive military history. She volunteers in the community with many organizations supporting youth, education, and continues to provide training with M365, career readiness, and sought-after 21st century skills. So once again, I would like to welcome our two panelists here today to discuss with us digital advocacy and how we can end digital abuse. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with some questions. So my first question is actually for Dante. So can you hear me, Dante?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay.
Excellent.
Awesome. So my first question for you is, as a law enforcement professional, especially within the federal government, you deal with the most severe of crimes. Research shows that violence tends to follow an escalation pattern. Once a major act of violence is committed, there usually is a period of nonviolence that follows, and then escalation begins again. We see this all the time in IPV and TDV. So my question for you is, within your role at the Bureau, what escalating factors do you see specifically within cybercrime, especially within teenage or maybe young adult cases?
So there's several, right? And I think before I really get to it, let's talk a little bit about the federal statutes with respect to cyber stalking, right? So that was enacted in 1996, and it expanded in 2000 to address cyber stalking. And an interesting statistic that I found was the National Public Radio conducted a survey of 72 domestic violence shelters, and they found that 85% of domestic violence workers assisted victims who had abusers who tracked them using GPS, right? So with respect to your original question, the escalation that we see, it starts small, right? With frequent texting, things of that nature. Hey, can I track you on GPS? Can I follow you? Can I follow your movements? Tracking on social media, and then it just expands from there. I mean, it's the very traditional method used by abusers, right? It's just being expanded
Right.
out to the cyber stalking arena, right? And what was once done in a car or in a vehicle or following someone to work or things of that nature is now done through the cell phone or through the internet. And it's very
Right.
troubling and finally coming to the forefront.
Right. Wow. Do you now exclusively do cybersecurity, or are you still with a bunch of different divisions within the Bureau?
So now I'm into cybersecurity at this point. So I've made the
Okay.
transition over and doing cybersecurity.
Okay, very cool. My next
Yeah.
question is for you, Colette. So, as a technology professional who focuses on community development, especially, how can technology help individuals and communities grow toward one of a consent culture, empowerment, and resiliency?
It's a pretty loaded question with three really powerful words. And I'll start by saying it's all about how you utilize the technology. So, as you heard Dante mention, following
Mhm.
and tracking, well, you can kind of turn that on its head and utilize that technology in the way that law enforcement does and be prepared. So, you get those early warnings. You have the ability to control access to your movement, and the way that you allow people to connect with you. So that's one way that you can use technology to support and manage your control of your environment. Another way, in terms of empowerment, is building up your knowledge base and your understanding of how technology works in order for it to work for you. So a lot of times information is power, really, and the taking away of or the removal of information is a way that people take away power. So if you take
Mhm.
back your power by being informed, that gives you the opportunity to control your environment and how you use technology. And then finally, you talked about inspiration. I think it's important for us to understand that we can inspire ourselves by building up those strengths and having that great self-talk. And a lot of information on the internet and within technology applications gives you those
Mhm.
inspirations. You can put good messages in your head every single day and use those good messages to springboard the way that you control your environment.
Yes, very cool. So, I guess to follow up with that, what technology skills do you want to see most in the hands of young people? Why? How can young people gain access to those types of skills?
So I think a lot of times we misunderstand skills. And what we think
Mhm.
about in terms of skills are generally hard skills, but soft
Mhm.
skills are also very powerful in the right hands and with the right perspective.
Right.
But I will definitely say that if you understand how to analyze information, even starting with a basic Excel spreadsheet, how to
Mhm.
connect information to a story that you're trying to tell, how you are able to analyze data and turn it into useful information. That's a skill that you can begin to
Right.
develop as a youth. Presentations. How do I make a PowerPoint and share my story in an impactful way? How do I, pictures are worth 1,000 words, right? So a video is
Mhm.
probably worth 1,000,000. Convert those pictures into videos. We see a lot of youth interested in streaming and interested in YouTube because they can tell stories. Well, if you can do that in a proficient way, in a professional manner, then it becomes impactful. It energizes you and gives you power. So developing those skills using PowerPoint and using streaming. Also communication.
Mhm.
Communication is key. It is a way to empower yourself. It is a way to connect with other people who are
Right.
like-minded and also give them an inside look at who you are beyond what they see. So being able to communicate. And that means basic email, Outlook, Gmail,
Mhm.
Microsoft Teams, Zoom, the platform we're on today. All of those are communication tools that you can use. And then finally, social networking. And a lot of times we kind of shy away from social networking because it's been used as a weapon against us, right? But if we
Mhm.
take it back and use it as an empowerment tool, we can connect with social media networks. LinkedIn is a professional network, but it's also a great source of information about innovation, technology, forward movement, and building up that knowledge base, that mindset of growth and development. And I'm great will empower you and make you feel like you can do anything. So just understanding the basic spreadsheets, analysis of data, how to present, how to look your best and fit the mold. You have to understand what the requirements are before you can meet them, right? Especially if you want to exceed. So I think for youth, it's really a matter of thinking about technology in terms of tools to use in order for you to have the best life that you can.
Very cool. Very nice. I'm going to actually go back to Dante now. So when I talk to young people about dating violence, one of the biggest things that I always try to do, no matter what the setting is talk to them about like unhealthy or abusive dating behaviors that have been almost normalized within our culture. So like if your partner says that they can't do something for you, or your partner like, you know, does something small, like physical violence is not an appropriate way, for example, to react to that. I was wondering, do you and your colleagues in the Bureau, when you work on these like cybersecurity crimes especially, do you see any forms of digital abuse or unhealthy digital behaviors that almost seem like normalized within our culture?
No, sure, absolutely. So, you know, the first part of that is sexually explicit pictures, right? I mean, that's the number one thing that has kind of been normalized in our society, and kind of like, oh, it's not a big deal, but it's a very big deal, right? Because that can be weaponized, right? And that can be used to abuse, that can be used to blackmail, that can be used to manipulate, right? So at the forefront of all this in the cyber abuse realm is the psychological abuse, right? That's the initial thing that has to start, the manipulation of psychological abuse that has to be there. So once that starts, then the cybersecurity aspect is just weaponized, right? So you have things like the sexually explicit videos, the pictures. You know, you need to send me this because if you don't love me. Those types of things. You know, send me images, send me videos, and making the other person feel bad, especially from a younger teen aspect, right, where you don't have those skills, right, the experience in life to be able to know that's not right. You know, if a person really does love me, if I'm in a good relationship, I don't have to do those things, right? Another thing that we've seen is passwords, right? So teens and young adults being forced to give up passwords to social media, to their cell phone. Hey, if we're in a relationship, if you love me, I want your passwords, you know, things of that nature. These things have come to be normalized. You know, another thing that's kind of shocking to people is stalking, right? Tagging, right? You know, hey, I saw you on your Facebook page, you were at Chipotle, you know, why didn't you tell me you were there? Or where were you? Or, you know, trying to get someone in a relationship to not be forthcoming about their location, and that turns into an argument or a physical altercation, right? So we always preach to people to be very careful about tagging locations, or, you know, maybe waiting till they get home to post, not posting in live real time, right? So someone can, and if you have an open profile, right, maybe consider making that private to only friends and family. So, you know, people can't just get on to see all your movements, to include those, you know, ex-boyfriends or people you're not in a relationship with.
Right. So to even follow up on that too, like, what could you maybe explain to our young people a little bit more, like how easy it is to be hacked, or how easy it is for somebody to be able to just like take control? Because I think even like with myself included, until very recently when I watched this crazy documentary, like I didn't realize how easy it was for them to like take data, or, you know, follow your locations, or like I was like way late in the game when I realized that Snapchat you can track like all your friends on Snap. And I was like, it's weird that I know like who's in China right now. You know, I don't need to know that. But
Well, you know, it's funny because things have gotten better where these companies are a lot more forthcoming about that they're actually tracking you. So like when Snapchat first came out and it gave the feature of being able to enable your location, it was just like, do you want to do this? Yes or no, right? But it didn't really go into the detail of what that means, right? So that I can literally go on Snapchat and see what street you're on, or where you're located in the country. I mean, these are very troubling things, right? So for parents right now, it's very important for them to be able to know what their teens are doing, to take advantage of some of these adult, you know, functions that are in some of these apps and on the phones, to be able to make sure that privacy settings are cut on, make sure your kids and teenagers understand how these privacy settings work, what they mean. There's a lot that goes into that, right? So there's a lot that can be found about a person. We had a case where it was not a teenager, but a young adult. She had ended a relationship, and the person, as revenge, took a photo of this person and started went on Craigslist and put on a site that they were open to having a sexual encounter to anyone. So 40 people, and provided her address, and 40 people showed up at her house. 40 men showed up at her house. And I mean, that's just how easy it can be, right? Where someone just takes an image, they post it, they create a fake profile on one of these dating sites. Hey, you know, look looking for this or that. Please come to my address. Here's my phone number. And then, it's just a form of harassment.
Right. Right. I've definitely seen that too. Like I've known cases, especially like within like different types of relationships. Like I remember cases with like young people who like there was a breakup and like the dude kept spamming her on Facebook Messenger and like sent her like a photo of like a positive HIV test just to freak her out,
Wow.
and it was
Wow.
terrible.
Wow.
Like I remember even the judge like freaking out and being like, that was disgusting. And do you know how many people, like, that's a serious disease, like you should never joke about that or even do that to like get revenge. But even outside of that setting, like in my personal life, I've heard stories like that, people just using it as a tool to like be able to still harass the person even when the breakup is done.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, and even aspects of maybe people or a significant other or a person you're in a relationship with just constantly texting you, and it psychologically makes the person feel bad if they can't get to their phone to text them back right away. So you have that person saying, hey, I was texting you. I mean, just completely bombarding you with text messages. And just because you're not right next to the phone to be able to respond, then it becomes a psychological thing like, oh, I always have to have my phone with me. Oh, I have to respond to this person right away or they're going to get very upset. I mean, these things build and build and they build on each other, right? And it's all just a way to weaponize cybersecurity, the cyber aspect of stalking and harassment. And again, these are very fundamental abuser type techniques, right? But now they've just been expanded out to the cyber realm, right? And the phone has been weaponized, the internet has been weaponized.
Very true.
Can I make a quick comment on that?
Yeah, I was going to bring it back to you. What are your thoughts?
So in the whole scheme of consent, we typically gloss over those questions that they ask when we want to access apps because we just want to get to using it, right? And as young people, we don't really think about the implications of giving that access. It's the same as giving consent. And I think part of what we do is take it too lightly. We take consent too lightly. And then once the consent is given, now we're having a difficult time taking it back. Your first question to me talked about consent culture. And, we often think of consent as a one-time thing. If today I'm your girlfriend and I give you consent to call me anytime you feel like it, all day, every day, that's great. But if next week I'm no longer your girlfriend because this relationship is not working for me or I'm nervous about some behaviors you displayed, you no longer have consent to me on a consistent basis. Right. I've taken it back. We've separated. We've removed that. So now I don't owe you that. You don't own me. You don't control me. That consent is gone. And so part of taking that consent away is giving yourself freedom.
Right. I totally agree.
Giving yourself that freedom and allowing yourself the ability to say no and to be empowered in that. And so I think what you were talking about, Dante, is so important that, the cybersecurity piece of it is being weaponized and being controlled by the other person. Take that control back. You can. They want you to feel like you can't. That's part of it, that control. So if you decide that you're going to be really deliberate about controlling your own environment and access to you, you just diffuse that weapon to an extent, and law enforcement is helping with that. And I think you guys do an amazing job of building up those barriers so that, the person who is constantly being bombarded has an advocate, has assistance, and doesn't feel like they have to be their own police force. But honestly, that autonomy that you take back when you take control of who has access to you and give yourself that freedom, we need to really think about building that culture of consent. A bore that, forcing themselves on you in any way, whether it's just in phone calls, in text, on Messenger, et cetera. I think that is very important for us to realize we do have the ability to take that control back.
Right. I totally agree with all of that. Actually, I think it's Planned Parenthood has this super great acronym for consent called FRIES. And it touches on a lot of different points that it's freely given, it's reversible, it's ongoing and enthusiastic. And I thought that example you brought up with the apps was so great. Like sometimes you're excited for what's going to come next. You don't even think about it. And then you're never given that option again to take it back and be like, maybe I'm not feeling this. Maybe this isn't what I want. Or in my case with Snapchat, you don't even know that it's still going and you're being tracked.
Right.
So I guess for both of you, a great follow-up question, as Dante being a law enforcement professional and Colette a technology professional, based on your expertise, what does building consent culture into digital use and more importantly, like digital dating, what does that look like to you? Because I will say on my end, because of the pandemic, I'm sure you've seen the articles, DV has skyrocketed. And with young people who are in relationships, especially college students too, I hear way too often that all the abuse is just happening on the computer right now. Because, they're in separate homes, the abuser might not feel like they have as much control over the survivor and then try to double back down on that. So yeah, based on your expertise and also just like you as people, what does consent culture in dating online or just being online mean to you?
For me, I mean, there's a couple things, right? I mean, consent is consent, right? And it's really up to the person to take charge and lay that foundation down. Like, hey, this is the way things are going to be. I mean, you have to be very strong, right? I mean, one thing that I encourage people to do, and I want to encourage the teenagers here is, if you're in a relationship and things are going sour or bad, and you start exhibiting, your partner starts exhibiting some of these behaviors. The main thing is that make sure you document it, right? So a lot of times you'll see teenagers on Snapchat and some of these encrypted apps like Signal, and these communications are disappearing, right? So you're getting these threatening communications and they're disappearing. So if you feel like a relationship is going a certain direction that you're not comfortable with, and this person is communicating you on through an app or through a mechanism that's encrypted or will delete, hey, make sure you have those communications via text message. So there's documentation so that when you come to law enforcement, you can say, hey, look here, this is why something's going on here. I need a restraining order. Here's the evidence. Because, if there's no evidence, it's very hard to really take any action, right? Or there's plausible deniability there. So that's something that I would really encourage the teenagers here to do. Be very careful with the Snapchats of the world, Signals. I mean, some of these apps out here that give you that encryption to hide things, right? But they also hide evidence when things are going terribly, terribly wrong.
Right. Colette?
And I would say that a couple things aligned with what Dante mentioned. Recording incidents is very important. It's also important to make sure that they don't disappear. If you record it, archive it, save it, make sure that it's in a safe place. Don't give that person access to where you're archiving it because they can make it disappear. Be careful with that. And I would say, in the same way that you want to have a great first impression, you also want to make sure that you're not an easy target. Let people know that you're aware of ways to protect yourself and the applications that are out there, the support that's out there, that you understand how to be a part of a group and that you're not going to be easily isolated. I've noticed over the years that a lot of people that have a tendency towards those negative behaviors, those violent behaviors, they look for people who they can isolate, who they think don't have the understanding of technology, so that they could exploit them.
Oh, you froze.
I did?
Oh, there you are. You're good now. You're good.
Yeah. So, as I was talking about understanding technology, I freeze. But yeah, that's one of the things that I think is important, is to have that understanding of how things work, so that you're not an easy target. And then don't be afraid to let people know. The other thing that I would say in terms of the apps and the consent culture, like any culture, it's social, right? And so when we talk about reactions, likes and hearts and emojis, we have to think about consent as a culture and be willing to stand up and say, I think this is important, and not be afraid to stand up and be a little bit different from everyone else who's saying, yeah, I'm going to go with whatever everybody else is doing. Let's do what's safe, what makes sense for us, and be empowered in that. it's been a long time since I was in high school, but when I was in college, I remember feeling like I had to go along to get along. And going along to get along put me in a precarious position as an athlete because there was a lot of hazing. And so I felt like I had to subject myself to some of these things in order to be a part of the collective, right? Like the Borg in Starbucks.
Collective, yeah.
I didn't want to get kicked off the island like in Survivor.
Right.
So I would go along with things until I realized it was hurting me. And I decided I was going to stop and look for like-minded people who are okay with me, who I am, and being willing to step aside from the social norms that were dangerous. So understanding consent culture as a social norm and creating a better environment for us all, I think is very important as well.
Amazing. I am so loving this discussion. Thank you both so much. To our attendees, feel free if you have any questions to throw them in the chat. I am more than happy to ask our panelists any sort of questions that you guys want surrounding digital advocacy and digital abuse. But to kind of keep moving on through this discussion, I kind of wanted to pivot gears a little bit and talk about dating online and meeting people online, because more often than not, and I know from all of my friends, folks are using Hinge, they're using Bumble, no one uses Tinder anymore, but no hate if you do. But it's becoming more and more common, especially for college students, right? And with a lot of our teens that attend Summit, most of which are juniors and seniors, this is a culture that they will be exposed to once they enter higher ed. So I was curious to ask you guys, what are your thoughts as, a law enforcement professional, as a technology professional on the dating apps, and how can folks keep themselves safe if they choose to engage in those types of platforms?
Yeah, so to start it off, the discussion off, I think the main thing with dating apps is this is the future, right? I mean, this is kind of what a lot of young adults are doing now. I mean, especially in a situation where COVID, where bars are closed and things of that nature, and it's kind of difficult to meet people in social settings. I mean, it's easier to get on an app and kind of get on the menu and try to find something that kind of fits your needs and what you're looking for, right? It's very convenient. You have a lot of options. But with that comes a cloak of secrecy, right? I mean, you're making the assumption that the person on the other side, the profile that you're looking at, is in fact that true person, right? So what we ask people to practice is really to be smart, right? To be thorough. Sometimes it's exciting when you first get on these apps and you're getting all these likes and people are reaching out to you. You're like, oh, this is exciting. I'm single. I have 40, 50 people reaching out to me. This is very, very fun.
Right.
But you have to be smart, right? You have to make sure you have communication with that person, several phone calls to make sure that, the person is kind of matching up with the profile. I mean, try to get to know the person as best as you can. Then you want to meet in a public place, right? I mean, some of these are pretty obvious, but sometimes when emotions get involved or excitement gets involved, common sense doesn't always kick in, right? So, if you want to go to someone's house that you don't know, that you've never met, you never want to meet someone somewhere that you're unfamiliar with. I mean, coffee dates, things of that nature. Hey, let's meet in the mall. Let's meet at Starbucks. Let's meet at dinner. Somewhere around a public place where there's a lot of people. You just want to protect yourself, right? And you don't want to give too much of yourself up. You never want to give up, where you live, your address specifically. Hey, I mean, a lot of these built-in apps now have communication mechanisms where you don't have to give your phone number. I mean, even things as little as a phone number can really be telling, right? I mean, there are all kind of applications out online where you can pay to basically do a background check on someone, and you can get their address through, credit information, right? Commercial databases out there where if I simply have your phone number, if you've had that phone number for a long time, I can pay $25 and get, your address and where you work or even your criminal history. I mean, it's amazing what you can get out there. It's amazing.
Did not
If
know
you're willing
that.
to pay, yeah, if you're willing to pay, I mean, if you're willing to pay the money, you can find out quite a bit about a person, and it's all commercial, credit information, right? That these companies have purchased and they're selling. But you have to be very careful. I mean, even something as simple as a name, right? Like, if you have a unique name, and you get on these if you pay to purchase on these commercial databases, I mean, I can find out where someone lives, or or I can follow someone. If I meet you at Starbucks, I can follow you back home. I mean, you just have to really be careful about who you're dealing with.
I would agree. I would agree
Yeah.
with all of that. And one thing that I would say for sure is use different photos for your dating profile than what you have on your social media.
Mhm.
You don't know who's on the other end. You know you're having a good time. You know that what they say is intriguing and interesting. That's the intent of them putting it out there. Just like you want them to be interested in you, they want you to be interested in them, but it may not be for the same reasons. So avoid anything that feels a little bit too good to be true or too just feels suspicious, like strange, um, or linked to social media accounts that look a little bit catfishy.
Mhm.
And then if you figure out that somebody's weird or a little bit suspicious, block them. Don't feel bad
Right.
about blocking someone. Report them if something strange happens because you
Right.
save the next person from going through that. Um,
Right.
and check them out. If you have the ability to, check out your potential date. If they give you access to information, check it out. If it doesn't check out, move on. You know, don't
Mhm.
dwell on something that you think is interesting. If it feels fishy, it probably is. And then, just like Dante said, don't be in a hurry to give them all your information. And definitely, if they ask you anything financial, that's a huge tell. Run. Don't walk
Right.
away from that one.
Yeah.
Run. If
Right.
they ask you information about your finances, about your family, anything related to social security number, credit card, bank information, if someone asks you for your home address or even hints that they want to know where you live and your stomping grounds, ask questions about that. You know, don't assume that good intent. And I know that's kind of sad to say. You can't always assume good intent. But what you can do is be armed with your basic 5 steps. And my first one is check them out. If they seem fishy, they probably are. The second one is hold back that information that you think could probably give them a way to get to you, because that's not what you want. And then the third one, obviously, I mentioned the photo. Be very careful about the pictures that you put out there because that reverse engineering thing is real. Your phone number. If you can avoid it at all costs, don't give them your phone number. Just like Dante said, they can find you and they can bug you. Even if it's just you don't gel with that person, they will continue to message you and email you and call you and all those things, and it becomes a bad situation. And then when you do meet them in person, don't let them pick you up. Don't leave the same time they leave if you can help it. Stay a little while so they don't have the ability to follow you. And definitely tell somebody where you're going. Tell a friend,
Mhm.
tell a parent, let somebody else know where you're going. And if at all costs, meet during the day. Dinner sounds good until it starts getting dark early. And then, strange things happen to predators when it gets dark. They start to feel a little bit more strong and quick to do some things because no one will
Yeah.
see them. But
Yeah.
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 Very
Yeah.
true. All right. Well, we're down to our final 3 minutes, and I only have one more question for you guys. I swear. So
You can ask more questions. We're okay.
I want to. This has been so fun. I've been learning so much. But my final question for you is about the infamous algorithm. So with the 2020 election going on right now, or even just going on your Instagram page, the data that's collected on you, really creates the type of content that you're exposed to. And what we're seeing a lot of, besides low self-esteem, besides higher rates of depression and suicidal ideation in young people, is that we're also seeing things like confirmation bias, especially in a time as politically contentious as it is right now. I
Mhm.
wondered if either of you guys had tips for young people to hack the algorithm, or tips for them to remember or to be mindful of while they're on platforms, that the algorithm is designed the way that it is.
Yeah, so I think my biggest tip for the algorithm is remember you are your own unique person, right?
Mhm.
And this I mean this is really for the teenage parents out there. It's like, really stay close to have a relationship with your kids, right? I mean, let them know, empower them, let them know they can come and talk to you,
Mhm.
and kids vice versa, right? I know when you're at that age, sometimes your friends become, your closest ally, but in
Mhm.
reality it should be your parents, right? And this will help to combat so much of the problems that we're seeing out there. But yeah, I mean, with respect to social media, I mean, it's not real, right? I mean, in several aspects, it's not real, right? And there's a lot of things out there that you just can't compete with or keep up with. And I think you set yourself at a disadvantage when you try to compete with certain things and images that aren't real, right? And that have been photoshopped, and and you have people who are putting pressure on you to look like other people and look more like other people, to include those you're in a relationship with. You're very much your own unique person, and I think if you keep that in mind and empower yourself from that standpoint, things will be good.
Colette?
I would say a couple things. One, the things that are different about you, what makes you unique, will make you stand out and can be very powerful. If you think about all the extraordinary movie stars and music industry top seeders, they're all different than what is considered the norm or what a lot of people are trying to look like. And if you think about that from the perspective of what you want in life, you want to have a great experience in life. You want to do amazing things in life. So let your greatness shine through who you are as a person. And I watched a docuseries or a documentary on Netflix called The Social Dilemma. And it was
that's what I watched. It scared me so bad.
Yeah.
It's really good.
It is so good.
And I guess for me, I didn't get scared until about 3/4 of the way through, because a lot of it I already knew. I knew that it was a social construct. I knew that it was all about making money. I knew that the ethics had kind of taken a backseat to capitalism in the way that a lot of tech companies are using data and information to reframe movements. You have to be aware of the fact that the information that just pops up, it's not voodoo. It's not in your cards. It's not tarot. It's not those things. It's a social construct. It's Google taking all of that data, kind of like I talked about before, where you can analyze and convert big numbers into information that's useful. That's what they've done. Once upon a time, we just watched TV and saw commercials and thought, oh, this is cool. No, the intent is for you to spend your money. Now the intent is for you to stay connected. And every time I go out to dinner with my mom or my kids, I see people like this. And they only look up when the waiter comes with their food. You're not enjoying the people in your space. You are allowing those tech companies to take control of you and force you to look at what they put in front of you. And every time you make a connection online with one of the tech one of their constructs, you're feeding their machine. And that machine is then going back to you with what you told them you want to see. Right. And so now they're kind of reframing what is going to stay in front of you. And if you choose to stay right there, you're allowing them to take control of what's happening with you. And so I would say, in terms of the algorithm, be your own person. Just like Dante said, you are a unique individual as long as you allow yourself to be, right? Don't let a company trying to make money stop you from being who you are and change what you think is important and what you see every day. Choose to look outside, look at some trees, think, read, understand that there's more going on in the world than what's on your phone, and appreciate the gifts that you have, gifts of family, gifts of intelligence, gifts of beauty in all ways, shapes, and forms, and just love yourself. I would say that algorithm cannot take away your self-love. It cannot take away the things that you want to do, your ambitions, and the things that you want to do to have a good time. Just enjoy life and don't let the algorithm pull you into the matrix. You may not even know you're in there.
Yes. Point. I'm thinking about tech now, and I read this it's funny in like a dark humor way, but apparently some big university created this like lifelike robot that was traveling the world, and apparently the second it entered the US, it went to Philly, and someone in Philly destroyed it.
I saw that.
It's all of Europe. And the second it got into Philly, it was done.
Not having it, right?
Yeah. Right. Also like the Harvard robot dog that like takes Boston at night. But yeah, tech is crazy. But thanks so much to you two. our folks now have a lot more insight into how they can stay safe online. I want to thank everyone for attending this Believe workshop. If at any point today you feel like that you're in crisis, do remember, if you email us at teenscene@padv.org, we will have a Care Bear on standby that you can talk to. I want to say again, thank you so much to Colette and Dante for taking time out of your day and coming to share your expertise with our folks. We are going to take a brief intermission, and at 12:30, if you go back to sessions on that left sidebar, our ACT workshops will be available for you to start logging in. So thank you again so much to our panelists. This was such a great opportunity, and I will see you all at our next session. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank
Thank
you,
you, Jen.
Jen. Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.